Here on the south of the Isle of Wight, we look after a wonderful mix of different landscapes. From the two highest hills, Ventnor Downs and St Catherine's Hill, to the ever mobile and rugged coast of St Catherine's Point, and then the hidden and more secluded valley of Widcombe. You could say we've got some of the more unsung, beautiful landscapes of this island. The Ventnor Downs rise steeply from the seaside town of Ventnor. Behind me is a deeply incised dry valley that was eroded out by water and ice in glacial times. This is a wonderful place for chalk grassland. Much of it is on really steep slopes. Clinging to one of these slopes is a wood almost entirely made up of holm oak trees. Now what's interesting, if you look at some of the old pictures of Ventnor, this wood is in a really young state. So actually it's only really grown up over the last 100 years, and now it's a fully fledged holm oak wood. These evergreen oaks were introduced in the 18th century from the Mediterranean. They spread to many parts of the island from various gardens and parks. There's a fairly warm climate here at Ventnor, but these trees give an even more Mediterranean feel to the place. They produce a dense canopy of leaves, and the forest floor is littered with dry holm oak leaves which hardly ever rot away, so very little grows on the forest floor. If you're lucky, in May and June you might spot the odd large white helleborine orchid. The spread of these holm oaks onto the chalk grassland was largely kept at bay by extensive sheep and cattle grazing until really the 1920s. From that time, these marginal areas of grazing on really steep slopes began to reduce as it was less economic. So over the time, these trees have been able to spread out onto the down. In the 1980s and 1990s, we spent many volunteer and contractor hours clearing scrub from these downs to restore the chalk grassland to its former glory. We found, however, that the regrowth from the stumps was really hard to control. So in 1993, we got a group of Old English goats from the Valley of Rocks in Devon to control the scrub regrowth, and they've been here ever since, doing their conservation browsing for us. You can see here where holm oak is trying to spread out into the chalk grassland. This is growth that's come up from an old cut stump. If it wasn't for the goats browsing this off every year, this would rapidly grow up into a wood, and we'd lose this wonderful chalk grassland, all the chalk grassland flowers that grow in it, and the whole range of butterflies. Adonis blue, Glanville fritillary, brown argus. This is just such a fantastic place, but it's held in balance by having the goats and cattle grazing here as well. On top of the downs, there's a thick layer of flint. This gives rise to acid soils, and that's where we find heathland. Good quality heathland requires a mixture of vegetation types and structure. So birds like linnet and dartford warbler nest in quite dense patches of gorse, about 5 to 7 years old. In between those patches, that's where you find the insects, and of course the birds are feeding on the insects. So this habitat, in its most productive form, is a whole mixture of different types of vegetation. So let's take a closer look at the different elements of this heathland and how we're looking after it to help nature to really thrive. So here we've got a lovely bit of this heathland with a mixture of the different shrubs, flowering shrubs that grow here. So there's the dwarf gorse here, the yellow one, with its very fine spines. And then the dominant heather here in flower is ling, that's the pale pink. And then in between it is the darker pink of the bell heather there. And this scene here is just buzzing with the sound of honeybees and other bees taking nectar. Such a valuable source of nectar at this time of year. There is a good mixture of different heathland elements here on Luckham Down. So the nice mixture of heather and gorse, bilberry, acid grassland with the sheep's sorrel growing here. This is actually a fire break that we've cut. And cattle grazing is really important in maintaining this variety of habitats. However, on many parts of the Down, gorse has grown tall and is dominating all these lovely mixture of habitats. So we've taken a brave step, and in some places we've actually removed the gorse and the topsoil completely, scraped it off, reset the clock to allow the heathland, the heather particularly, to become established. So here is a heather seedling that's become established in the bare flint in just the first summer after we cleared off the topsoil. In choosing the areas of ground that we scraped off, we were very careful to pick areas that were next to blocks of mature heather so that there's the best chance that the seed from the heather can fall onto the bare ground and become established, just like we're seeing here. So this is bell heather, and hopefully these capsules are full of seed. Let's see. Maybe I'll look. Hundreds of little tiny seeds, just like dust. So if we can do a bit of heather establishment here in the bare ground. There we go, a new bit of heathland. So here, much of the heather is quite old and mature. When it gets to a certain age, it can start to collapse and die. So kick-starting this habitat again by allowing the seed to become re-established is a really good way of keeping this heathland going for future generations and all of the wildlife that really depends on it.